They laughed at her, mocked her skin tone, and whispered that she wasn't worthy of standing beside their son. Yet in that very moment, as their cruel words filled the air, she stood with trembling hands, forcing a smile, hiding the storm that raged within her heart. Her name was Ananya, and all her life she had been told she was not fair enough, not beautiful enough, not enough for a world obsessed with glowing skin. But she had learned to live with hope, believing that love could be her redemption, that kindness and loyalty mattered more than complexion. Ananya had grown up in a modest home filled with love. Her parents adored her, shielding her from the venom of neighbors who often remarked, "She's so dark, who will marry her?" Her mother always said, "Your beauty is in your heart, my child. One day, someone will see it." Ananya held on to that belief, even when the mirror reflected back her insecurities. When Rohit's family approached with a proposal, she thought perhaps fate was finally on her side. The meetings were formal, polite, full of smiles. Rohit himself seemed distant, neither too cold nor too warm, but Ananya thought maybe he was just shy. His parents praised her education, her cooking, her soft-spoken nature. No one mentioned her skin tone directly, and she dared to believe they had looked past it. Her parents were relieved, whispering prayers of gratitude that their daughter had found her home. The wedding preparations began, and Ananya's heart fluttered with anticipation. Saris were chosen, jewelry polished, mehendi applied with laughter and music. Her relatives fussed over her, showering blessings, while inside, she wrestled with a quiet fear. Would they truly accept her? Would she finally belong? She brushed the thought aside, convincing herself love would conquer doubt. On the wedding day, the air shimmered with festivity. Guests poured in dressed in vibrant colors, cameras flashing, laughter echoing. When Ananya entered the hall, adorned in crimson and gold, heads turned. For a brief moment, she felt like a queen. But then came the whispers, sharp enough to pierce her heart, "Is that the bride? She's so dark. Our Rohit is so handsome, he deserved better. She looks like a servant in royal clothes." The words traveled faster than the music, spreading like poison. Rohit's relatives hid their laughter behind palms, exchanging cruel smirks. Ananya's heart sank, her smile faltered. She tried to focus on the rituals, on the sacred vows, but her ears caught every insult, her spirit breaking with each snide remark. She carried herself with dignity through the ceremonies, but when she stepped aside to the dressing room, her strength crumbled. Tears rolled down her cheeks, smudging the carefully applied kohl. She clutched her dupatta, hearing her mother's words echo in her mind, "Your beauty is in your heart." She wanted to believe it, but in that moment, surrounded by mockery, it felt like a lie. After the rituals, she was taken to Rohit's house. The new bride, welcomed with tradition, should have felt warmth. Instead, she walked into a den of judgment. The groom's mother inspected her like merchandise, commenting on her sari not suiting her complexion. The aunts whispered about how unfortunate it was that such a dark girl would bear the family's heirs. Even her attempt to help in the kitchen was ridiculed. "Stay away, don't burn the bread. Maybe your color will rub off on the dough." Laughter followed. Ananya smiled weakly, hiding her anguish. When her parents called to ask how she was, she lied, "I'm happy. Everyone is so kind." Her mother sighed with relief, never knowing her daughter was swallowing tears between every word. At night, she lay beside Rohit, who remained silent, scrolling through his phone, avoiding her gaze. She wanted him to defend her, to say something, anything, but he never did. His silence hurt more than the laughter. Days passed, each one heavier than the last. The family's cruelty grew bolder, their mockery less hidden. At a family gathering, it reached its peak. Surrounded by relatives, someone cracked a joke, "Turn off the lights, she'll disappear into the darkness." The hall erupted with laughter. Ananya's face burned, her chest tightened, and tears threatened to spill. She glanced at Rohit, desperate for support, but he lowered his eyes. Her world collapsed in that instant. She wanted to scream, to ask why her worth was tied to her skin, but her voice was trapped. Just as she prepared to leave the room in shame, her phone buzzed. The sound sliced through the laughter. She quickly answered, her voice trembling, "Hello." On the other side, a warm voice filled her ears, "Ananya, my dear, how are you? I wish I could have been there at your wedding." It was her uncle, the man who had loved her like his own daughter, the man who had always told her she was destined for greatness. She forced a smile through her tears, whispering, "I'm fine, uncle, everything is good." But her voice betrayed her. He sensed the pain she tried to hide. "What's wrong, child? Tell me the truth." She hesitated, glancing around at the mocking faces. She wanted to stay silent, but her heart ached too much to lie again. With a shaky breath, she whispered the words that would change everything, "Uncle, they laugh at me, because of my skin." A heavy silence followed. Her uncle's breathing grew firm, his voice steady but laced with fire. "Don't you worry, Ananya. I will handle this." She held the phone tight, her tears flowing freely now, while the groom's family shifted uneasily, realizing they had overheard enough to know this was no ordinary call. In that moment, as she wiped her tears, she felt a flicker of hope. A storm was coming, and for the first time, it wasn't inside her, it was about to descend upon those who had crushed her spirit. The laughter around her slowly faded into a nervous silence, as if they sensed their mockery had awakened something far greater than they had ever imagined, and so, the girl who had been broken by whispers and taunts held on to the voice on the other end of the line, unaware that this phone call was the very spark that would turn her story upside down. The phone was still in her hand, her eyes swollen from holding back tears, her heart pounding as her uncle's words echoed in her mind. "Don't you worry, Ananya. I will handle this." She didn't know what he meant, but for the first time since the wedding began, she felt the faintest spark of protection. The relatives who had laughed at her only minutes ago now exchanged uneasy glances. They had overheard just enough to know that this uncle was no ordinary man. The night dragged on, heavy with awkward silence. Ananya stayed in her room, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had made a mistake by confessing her pain. But the next morning, her answer arrived at the doorstep. Cars pulled up outside the house, sleek and expensive, the kind that made neighbors peek through curtains. Out stepped her uncle, tall, commanding, dressed in simple clothes but radiating authority. Everyone froze. The same family that had ridiculed Ananya rushed forward with fake smiles plastered on their faces. "Welcome, welcome. You should have told us you were coming," Rohit's mother stammered, her voice dripping with false sweetness. He greeted them politely, but his eyes searched only for Ananya. When she came forward hesitantly, he took her hand in both of his voice gentle, "My child, you don't look happy. And you were supposed to be." His words were simple, but the weight of them silenced the entire room. They sat together in the living room. Relatives tried to impress him with hollow praises, talking about the grandeur of the wedding, the number of guests, the food. He listened in silence, then turned sharply, his voice calm yet cutting. "Do you think I came here to hear your false praises? I know everything. I know how you have treated my niece." A hush fell. The aunts shifted uncomfortably, the cousins looked away, and Rohit stared at the floor. Her uncle continued, his voice growing firmer, "This girl, whom you laugh at for her complexion, is worth more than all your shallow pride. She has struggled, she has endured, and she still shows you respect. Do you even realize how small your words make you, not her?" His gaze swept across the room, pinning each of them. Nobody dared to laugh now. Then came the moment that none of them expected. He revealed the truth they had never known. "Ananya is not just my niece. She is my heir. Everything I have built, every company I own, every property under my name will belong to her. The girl you mocked for her skin will one day hold power and wealth that none of you could even dream of." Gasps echoed in the room. The same mouths that had ridiculed her now hung open in shock. Rohit's father fumbled for words, his tones suddenly soft. We didn't mean anything, it was just light talk. You're misunderstanding. But the uncle's sharp eyes pierced through the lies. Do not insult me further. I know exactly what you said. Even laughter leaves its scars. Tell me, if it had been your daughter standing in Ananya's place, would you still call this light talk? Silence answered him, faces changed instantly. The aunts who had whispered about her skin now clutched her hand, calling her beautiful, lucky, such a blessing. The cousins who had giggled now tried to include her in conversation. It was hypocrisy painted in bright colors, and Ananya could see through every shade of it. For the first time, she did not bow her head. She looked at them steadily, her voice quiet but strong. You don't have to pretend. I heard everything. I will never forget it. Her words carried no anger, just truth, and that truth was heavier than any insult they had thrown at her. The weight shifted again when Rohit finally spoke. His voice cracked with guilt. Ananya. I failed you. I should have stood up for you when they mocked you. I should have been your shield, but I was silent, and that silence makes me just as guilty as them. He turned to his family, his tone firm for the first time. From today, I will not tolerate a single insult against my wife. If you cannot respect her, then you cannot call yourselves my family. Everyone stared at him, shocked. This was not the same Rohit who had hidden behind silence. He looked at Ananya with eyes filled with remorse. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I promise you, from this moment on, I will never let you feel alone again. Tears welled up in her eyes, not of weakness but of release. For so long she had waited to hear those words, to feel that shield she had been denied. Her uncle placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice filled with pride. You see, child, your worth was never in their eyes. It was always in your heart. You needed no proof, but sometimes the world must be reminded. Ananya nodded, her spine straighter, her voice steadier. She turned to the relatives who now squirmed under her gaze. You thought my skin made me less. But it is your hearts that are dark, not mine. I don't need your approval, and I don't seek your praise. I know who I am, and that is enough. Her words struck deeper than any scolding her uncle could have given. Those who had laughed now lowered their eyes, some even trembling with shame. One aunt wiped her tears, whispering apologies. Another uncle muttered, we were wrong. The weight of their guilt filled the room, and for once, it was Ananya who stood taller than all of them. From that day on, the atmosphere in the house changed. The relatives who had mocked her now spoke to her with respect, though she never forgot their cruelty. The mother-in-law who had criticized her cooking now asked for her advice in the kitchen. Cousins who had mocked her complexion now praised her talents. It was not love, it was fear and respect mingled with guilt, but it was enough to stop the daggers that had once cut her heart. Rohit kept his word. He became her partner, not just by marriage but by choice. He stood beside her when relatives slipped in sly remarks, cutting them off sharply. He supported her when she wanted to continue her studies, encouraged her when she hesitated. Slowly, he earned back the trust he had once broken with silence. Ananya's uncle eventually returned abroad, but before leaving, he left one last message with the family. Do not forget the lesson you learned here. Skin fades, beauty fades, but the cruelty of words leaves scars that last a lifetime. Respect is the only ornament that makes a family honorable. His voice lingered long after his departure. Ananya, once the girl who hid her tears behind a veil, now walked with her head high. She smiled not because she was finally accepted, but because she had accepted herself. The scars of mockery remained, but they no longer defined her. She had discovered strength in the very place she thought she was broken, and so, the girl who had been ridiculed for her complexion became the woman who silenced her critics with grace, power, and dignity. Her story was no longer about pain, but about transformation. She was no longer the bride they laughed at, she was the queen they could never ignore. They had mocked her darkness, but in the end, it was her light that blinded them all.